Another day messing with the Volvo, because although I didn't film it because I was kind of rushing, I've changed some shit. Some because I decided to, some because things weren't right. First thing I decided to do, this was the other day, was I put the VXR injectors back in and a different chip. And that was just to see if it was any better like this. And yes and no. It runs as it is now. It runs fine. It's got a 6,500 RPM limiter, which is better than 6, but it's not enough. The AFRs are perfectly okay. It's fast. It's, you know, it's decent. But to do this, my static fuel pressure, you know, for these VXR injectors to flow enough, I think they're 470cc at 3 bar. For them to flow enough, I think they're 550 at 4 bar. I'm running 5 bar static pressure. And that's not really particularly a good idea. And I spoke to the guy, Martin Smith, who does the custom chips, and he agreed that, he was like, yeah, put the 630s back in, get it as close as you can on one of the current chips, and then I'm going to make notes of what needs improving basically, and then send him that chip as the base, and he will send it me back correct basically. So yeah, I've done that. This was my choice. What wasn't my choice was it's got a different ignition coil now. It was running, where is it? It was running this MSD Blaster 2 coil, which I bought, you know, it's less than a year old. Unfortunately, it decided to not want to work anymore. Well, it was working, but it was arcing like fuck. Literally, you could see from the outlet, you know, the king wire to the distributor, where it goes in, it was arcing between there and the positive and negative terminals. There's no damage on this, you know, no physical damage or anything, and there shouldn't be. It's never gone anywhere, but it was literally like arcing like that. So it was barely wanting to even start like that. So luckily, as I keep lots of bits and pieces, it is now got that coil, which is a Rally coil, which in the Cosworth world is called a Group A coil, because it's the ones they ran on Group A rally cars and stuff. Works well, works better than a typical coil, despite it being very small. And yeah, that's all good, but unfortunately I'm swapping the injectors over again. I'm also going to do a few other things. As you'll see from some driving footage, as it is, it's fast. Power band is literally like 4,500 RPM to 6,500 RPM limiter. It needs to be more. If I change up at the rev limiter, it stays within the power band. But unfortunately, there's two different things on a turbo engine that people mix up. People don't understand what lag is. There's boost threshold and there's lag. What most people think lag is what they really mean is it's not within the boost threshold. This car, the boost threshold begins at, realistically, the main boost threshold is 4,500 RPM. That's roughly where full boost is when this thing flies. Trouble is, even though I change up, so if I change up at 6.5, it's within the boost threshold for the next gear. It's about, goes down to about 5. It's got lag. So it don't matter if it's at 5, it still don't go anywhere for a couple of seconds while the turbo spools back up. And that's the difference. Most people they've never even fucking experienced lag, because a lot of people's big turbos, they might not spool up until, you know, higher in the rev range, but through the gears there's no pause as long as they change up and they're still in the power band. This I can change up and still be in the power band, but there's a pause. That is what lag is, and this has got lag, and it's really because it's an old worn out low compression 2 litre 8 valve engine that doesn't flow very well, with a fairly big turbo that's got a fairly big exhaust housing on it. So it's, you know, it's laggy, you know, that's just all there is to it. But I've got some ideas to improve on that. I mean, the obvious idea would just be change the fucking turbo for something smaller, but it's already there now. So yeah, I'm gonna do some other stuff as an experiment as much as anything, because don't get me wrong, it's fast as fuck and sounds ace, but real world fast, if you was racing something or whatever, the lag kills it now. But I got some ideas, and no, none of it's to do with this anti-lag. In fact, for now, because I don't want to get this working until I've got other stuff sorted, I'm going to remove the pipe work for that for now, temporarily, because I'm going to do something else. So that probably won't be this video. Watch this space. That's the injectors swapped back over to the 630s. Honestly, on this car, quickest job in the world. Injectors is easy on a lot of cars, difficult on a lot of the others, but I've never known it to be as easy as it is on this car. Literally a 5-minute job, which is good, because I'm always having to fuck with it. Ever since fitting this big new turbo, which is a bit laggy to say the least, I've been figuring out ways that I could make it better, less laggy, without changing to a smaller one, because nah, it's just not the way to go about things, is it? And yeah, one thing that kept sort of, well, the thought never kept going away was, well, the little supercharger I've had lying around for years. A little I can't remember what they're called, AMR 600s or something. They're usually on Kai cars. They're good for about 170 brake or so. They're not sort of big power superchargers, but that's still enough to sort of get rid of some lag. But it was a case of how would I fit it, and I couldn't resist today, so I had to play about, and the answer is like that. Alternator down there where the aircon used to be, and it bolts up with very little modification, and supercharger where alternator used to be. So yeah, physically it will fit. Would need a couple of custom tensioners making, because the tensioner for that alternator is on the opposite side, so it don't work, the standard one won't work there, and obviously there's fuck all at the moment tension that, but the belt runs, line up, everything. So yeah, this is very, very tempting to do. What I would do would likely be plummet post compressor, but pre-intercooler like that, and have a bypass, so once the turbo's creating boost, more boost than that anyway, it opens the bypass and pretty much, well, bypasses that. So, and once that's bypassed, as in it's still turning as fast as ever, but it's not compressed in any air, it's not doing anything, it's just freewheeling. It means it's not blowing as hot, and it's not sapping much, if any, power, so it shouldn't be a big issue, you know, doing that once it's bypassed, because that's all it'd be doing. It'd be basically helping giving the engine some power, which in turn will help spool that big motherfucker up a bit earlier. So yeah, I'm not going to finish it right now because there's shit to work out, but yeah, this is probably a good idea, because the difference, because Thomas was like, oh and it's just easier just to run like proper anti-lag. It's like, yeah, no, mostly no, because the difference with this is I can just run it, you know, all the time. It's just fine, it's always there. Whereas anti-lag, you realistically can't have it on all the time, so you're switching it on when you want it, and it has to be pretty savage anti-lag to actually have a decent effect, and that's noisy and can be a bit harmful. So this is a much more road friendly solution, and the fact it's just with normal crappy V-belts and whatever doesn't matter, because if it slips at high RPM or whatever, it's like, well, so what? It's being bypassed by then. You know, this would literally be as an anti-lag device. It's not, you know, the supercharger isn't there to create more power up top. It's purely there to give it a boost low down. Because I mean, I think it's only good for 170, 180 brake. It couldn't give me a boost up top if I fucking tried. So so yeah, that is my thoughts. I'm not doing it right now, but the theory is very viable. Seeing as I only use the alternator on the big bracket on this car, and seeing as providing I do the supercharger thing, I'll be doing it with this one. I got a spare bracket I had and chopped it in, well, a bit more than half, because this bottom bit, which is pretty heavy to be fair, I no longer need, and this is just the alternator bracket. So I'm going to bolt that on and chuck this bit away. This, I can't be bothered weighing it, but this is, I would say, 2 to 3 kilos. It's quite a big chunk of aluminium. It's pretty heavy. So yeah, mild weight saving and just a little bit more room in the engine bay, which is probably the most useful part. So yeah, dead easy. Angle grinder, chop, done. That's all the engine bay related stuff done. So injectors are changed, fuel pressure is down to a level where at least at idle it's decent. I'm going to need to drive it to tweak it to work out from there. Anti-lag stuff I've temporarily removed. The alternator is back on with a much smaller bracket, which now don't go all the way to the bottom like the old one. Lighter. I've adjusted the idle control because I've had no idle speed control valve on this forever, because they're just more trouble than they're fucking worth. And without it, it's a bit tricky not to get it to idle. Get it to idle is easy, but because the way the throttle position sensor is, it's difficult to get it to idle low enough while still operating the throttle position sensor properly. Because the thing is, you get to the end of the travel of the adjustment for the TPS, and you think, oh well, no big deal, I just elongate the holes a bit more, which I did. But then you realize you've got to the end of the travel of the movement of the TPS internally. So even if you move it more, all you're fucking doing is holding the throttle slightly open with the TPS. So basically, with the TPS connected in the place you want it to be, the correct place, the throttle was being held open. But in the place you need it to be, it was too fucking low. So it's a balancing act. But I modified the bypass, because all throttles aren't totally sealed when shut. There's some bypass of air, and I slightly modified it so the throttle position is in the correct place, so the TPS is reading correctly, but there's enough air bypass that it idles lovely. It took a bit of thinking to work out how the fuck I was going to do it, but it's done and it's sorted, and happy days. So yeah, it's all a lot neater and tidier and, well, more basic than it was. But now, at least, I can test this chip once and for all, and then send it off to Martin Smith, who will make me one that actually suits this application. Because that's the thing, every chip so far, fuel chip for this, is off a different car. It is one Martin Smith made, but for somebody else entirely, and it's spare ones he had that he lent me to test, and I've been using them ever since. But they're not for a 2 litre, they're for a 2.3. They're for a car which, it turns out, wanted a relatively low rev limit, which would explain my fucking problem. And they're not even for these injectors, and they're not for that turbo. You know, it's close, but it's not this setup. So an actual one suited to this will be a lot better. And, you know, well, I've never actually had one yet, because, well, not actually necessarily needed one. But on this new turbo, it doesn't work well enough without it to go with these anymore. So yeah, that's the engine bay stuff done. But I'm going to do something else now, which I don't know why I'm doing it, apart from it will make the car a bit faster, but I can't help myself with the tinkering. So I'm going to turn the car so the back end is in the workshop, and you'll see what's going on in a second. I've just removed another 14 kilos, and yes, I weighed it all, from the car, although it looks the same. So how have I done that? Well, I shouldn't be allowed near an angle grinder because I can't help it. So obviously earlier on I chopped the alternator bracket because, well, I didn't need all the aircon crap to it, so I just needed the top bit. But then the angle grinder was out and it was making me think, and then I did a thing. Well, there's no more wheel well, and there's also no more back seat frame. And yeah, I left this bit because it is actually partially structural. I've been, you know, I haven't just fucking blindly cut away without thinking. I've left it like it is because that part there has got some strength to it. It's like even the panhard bar mounts to that corner, so I've left that bit. But this lot, I mean, to be fair, you look at a drift car or a competition car, when the rules allow it, they will chop the whole chassis rails, everything off from, say, like there back, because it serves no purpose from a chassis strength point of view. The suspension and everything, from basically the rear suspension mounting points backwards, it does nothing. So if you wanted to, you could cut this whole rear end off, which is what they do on race cars. They cut everything off, because obviously you've got this massive panel here and all of this, and cut all that off and just hang the panels on a sort of a very lightweight space frame and do it that way, and that would save a shitload of weight. But that also involves quite a lot of work, so I'm not doing it to this. But it would save a significant amount, 'cause I bet you they weigh a lot. All of this lot weighs a lot. But yeah, what I've done there has an effect same as what I've done under here. I've cut that bit away, but I've left the corners, and I've left some of this because it does have a bit of structure about it. I mean, you look at an estate version of this, obviously they've got none of this at all, and they're fine, you know what I mean? It's like it's not like they suddenly fold in half. but I thought, you know, the extra weight saving of removing, you know, these tiny little bits in the corner, considering they do look at least partially structural, I thought, nah, I'm gonna leave them. So it is what it is. I'm gonna, at the moment this is open, but I'm gonna get a sheet of, I don't know, something light, maybe a sheet of strong flexible plastic, and bolt it down, rivet it down to cover this, so it's not just open to the elements at all times. I mean, the other option would be to do what you'd have on a competition car, because often when they've got a hole like this on a competition car, they'll put a fuel cell and all sorts of shit in it. So, but I don't need that. But what competition cars would generally do is make a lightweight bulkhead to, so this bit's just completely open. But for me, that's more difficult because there's various little holes and whatever. It's far easier to seal it up by just, you know, a sheet of strong, tough, flexible though plastic of some sort, carbon fiber sheet, I don't bloody know, something, because, well, yeah, there's a big hole currently. But this is all the metal. I weighed it on that. It's like 14 kilos on the dot, which is, you know, not a huge amount. But when the car now probably weighs, I don't know, not much. Probably sub 1150 kilos. That's a not, you know, a not small amount of weight, you know. So yeah, done it. Honestly, do I think it's going to magically make a big difference to the performance of the car? No. Will it help though, just at all? Yeah, of course it fucking will. It's 14 kilos, but in all honesty, it's mostly because I couldn't fucking help myself. I'm dangerous with an angle grinder. I get ideas. So yeah, choppy chop. I mean, all of this is, you know, the car's been completely gutted. The only parts that I've left all the metal is the front doors, because, wow, crash protection, if not so much for anything else, but if you, wow, dickheads on the road, they can drive into you because they can't drive for shit. So I've kept the front doors as, you know, protected as standard, so in case anyone does decide to clatter into the side of me, that's all good. But from the rear doors back, I'm going, fuck, you know what I mean, nobody's in there. So it's gutted from the rear doors back. So that's where we are. Job done. Seem to have a co-driver this afternoon. What are you doing, Doris? Literally, I opened the door, unlocked the car to change one of the chips over to see which one is best to send the guy to get done as I wanted, and my dog jumped straight in, and I've stayed here ever since, and I've been here for like 30 minutes. You want to go for a drive or something, Doris? You want to go for a walk, really, don't you? You just know the car normally takes you for a walk. No interest in getting out. She's gonna stay there until I take her somewhere. Pretty much every time I work on this car, I forget something. And for the last, I don't know, a while, this car's felt really quick. But it's that fast and that airy lately that you can't really, you know, take much of a look at the boost gauge. And it's always been the same boost. I haven't touched boost gauge in ages, so I thought it was fine. been out testing it now to work out what's the best chip to run and all that for the right fuel in, to send it to the guy who's gonna do the correct chip for me, because I've never had a custom fuel chip for this car yet. I've just been using sort of the best of a bunch of somebody else's car. So I've been working at it today, and I was wondering why it's so fucking fast, and today I've finally, while testing, noticed why. I'll have to show you on a different clip or a picture or something. But it's been running 2.7 bar fucking boost, and it's like, why the hell? And now I open the bonnet, I noticed a few things. One, I've left a screwdriver there. That's probably been here about a week. And two, I haven't even put the hose onto the boost controller. Onto the wastegate, I mean, from the boost controller. It is... where is it? Here. Okay, oh, here it is, yeah. There. Fuck's sake. But yeah, anyone that thinks these engines aren't strong, well, can you run 2.7 bar boost on pump fuel on a standard bottom end of your car? No, probably not. And this has had the shit kicked out of it in the last fucking week or so like this as well. Like, literally, I've been doing fueling testing, and yeah, it's been having a kick in all the way to the limiter, and it's been running 2.7 bar and not cared less. But now I've put that back on, should be alright now. We'll see. This little part of the video is being taken from inside the Volvo, and it's a bit annoying really. It's my bad. You should have more footage of how the thing is driving now, because I spent a good few hours yesterday driving around testing the different chips and so on to find the nearest good one to send to Martin Smith, who's the chips expert, to base a more correct map on for what I want. Remember the other day when I said that I didn't think changing the MAF wiring from its super 8-foot length down to the correct length has made a noticeable difference? Well, upon testing, fuck yeah, it had. The AFRs under load especially, but yeah, generally it did make a big difference. It made things, well, turns out a lot fucking better. One of the chips actually had pretty much perfect fueling for this new setup with that, and none of them had before this. The car was genuinely fucking fast. The rev limit was still only 6,500, and it really is still only comes alive somewhere between 4 and 4.5, so a fairly small rev range, but fuck me, it's fast in that rev range. It's really good. AFRs are great, even at cruise and at idle and whatever. Like at idle it was about 14.5, at cruise it's anywhere between sort of 12.5 and 13.5. It drove lovely. On boost it was mid to high 10s to very low 11s at high boost, high revs. It was great. It was really good, to the extent that if it was always like this, I probably wouldn't have even bothered, you know, speaking to Martin and, you know, on about getting a increased rev limit. But now he said he's happy to do that. Fuck it, I might as well. But what I'm going to do, because it's that good, I'm going to ask him if I can to just give me back my old chips as well. So don't write over these ones. I don't know if I send him some other ones that I've got, no use to me or what. But yeah, I'm going to, as a backup, I would like to keep these current chips because the car's acceptable like this. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I just want to enjoy the thing, because now lockdown is easing. drift days are starting again, and I am dying to get this thing out there. And no, it's not going to be very a particularly nice drift car with like 2000 RPM of decent rev range, but that's what clutch kicks and driving like a loon is for, and that's what I'm good at. So now I'm in the car purely so I can take the chips out of both ECUs, which will leave it immobile for a little bit, but whatever. Only should, you know, Martin shouldn't take long to do this. Take them out, post them to him. He's going to work his magic, and then I get some new ones back. And hopefully it'll be basically the same, just with maybe another... With this cam, I don't really think it's worth... 7 will be fine. I think at the moment 6.5 is a bit short, but another 500 RPM would be fine. I think beyond that, it's going to be dropping off the power so much anyway, because it's only on a fucking V cam, that is probably not worth it. But 7 would be okay. I'm going to send him both chips because I'm not 100% sure where the limit, you know, where the limiter really is. The way it pops and bangs at 6.5 says to me that's an ignition cut limit at 6.5. In that case, that's the ignition ECU needs a limiter up in a bit. But I don't know what the fuel ECU limiter is anyway. But whatever, I'm just going to send him them both and you can go from there. But I just want him to keep the originals. Well, send me back the originals because they're okay. You know what I mean? I can live with this. Fucking hell. I'm not... I like you know, I can drive around this. Do you know what I mean? I have been. But also I've said to him, because at the moment, because the old turbo, while full boost was about 3.5, it was quite tractable before then. There was some boost, and then 3.5 was full boost. Different turbos behave differently, and this turbo is literally like dog slow, like no turbo at all. Not, you know, no noticeable effect of the turbo until like 4 grand, and then it fucking goes off like a nuclear bomb. You've literally got no boost and all the boost. It's quite hilarious, but it's not progressive, it's just boom. But I said to him, if I told him the way the power band is, because technically, while the fueling's bang on as it is, potentially the ignition timing can be ramped up a bit below 4 grand to give it a bit more oomph before the turbo, and it might spool the turbo a little bit quicker too. If he can do that, happy days. If not, I can live with this. You know, I've got no problem staying above 4.5 grand fucking drifting. And yeah, clutch kicks solve everything. So yeah, I'm going to take the chips out now, which is literally a 2-second job. And yeah, this car's just going to sit here for a few days, and I'll just go back to driving the Merc for a bit while he works his magic. I will miss this though, because I tell you, yesterday it was fast. I should have got some footage of it, but it was quick. And it was even faster when I accidentally was running. Wow. It's been running for a couple of weeks, it turns out, because these videos aren't exactly correct to the date. They're a bit in the past from when you're watching them. And I've spent the last couple of weeks when it's been really fast, but not quite right, with like the rev limit being too low and stuff. It's been running fucking 39 psi boost, but I've not been looking at that, and it's always been 2 bar, and that's what it's set to, and it's always been really accurate and believable, so I've left it. But like a Wally, I unplugged the vacuum line for the wastegate to change something over a week ago, and forgot to reconnect it. And for all that time I'm thinking, fuck me, this car's fast as anything, I wish I had a few more revs. And then yesterday I realised why when I actually glanced down at the boost gauge. It's been running, yeah, 2.7 bar, which is 39.2 psi boost. But the AFRs have been fine, and so it's been loving life. I mean, because boost don't kill engines, deck kills engines generally. And yeah, 39 psi, but with the AFRs sensible, it's been fine. So there you go. Right, let's get these chips out.